I can still feel the cold metal edge of that folding chair pressing into my back, the fluorescent light buzzing above my head like it was mocking me, and the smell of garlic butter and roasted lamb drifting through the industrial kitchen of the EI. Grandview Estate in Savannah, Georgia, where my younger brother Marcus was getting married to a woman named Jenna Caldwell on the second Saturday of October. And I, Claire Whitfield, the woman who had spent 6 years building Whitfield and Lane Creative, the boutique branding agency that put our entire family on the financial map, was sitting alone at a prep table between two catering staff members, who kept glancing at me like they weren't sure whether to offer me a hairnet or a glass of champagne. And the thing that made it worse, the thing that made my stomach turn and my eyes sting, was that nobody out there in that beautifully decorated ballroom with the crystal chandeliers and the hydrangea centerpieces and the live string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon even noticed I was missing, not my mother Diane, who had called me 3 times that morning to remind me to arrange the gift table, not my father Richard, who had handed me a clipboard at 7 a.m. and told me to coordinate with the florist because you handle pressure better than anyone, and certainly not Marcus himself, who had hugged me the night before at the rehearsal dinner and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Claire," while his fiancée stood behind him with that porcelain smile that never quite reached her eyes. It didn't happen all at once. It built slowly like water filling a basement you forgot to check, because 3 weeks before the wedding, Jenna had called me on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing a pitch deck for a 6-figure client, and she said in that sweet, practiced voice of hers, "Claire, we've been going over the seating chart, and it's just so tight. And Marcus and I were wondering if you'd be okay kind of floating around and helping behind the scenes since you're so incredible at managing things." And I remember sitting there with my phone pressed to my ear, looking at the framed photo on my desk of Marcus and me as kids building a treehouse in our backyard in Hartford. And I said yes. I said yes because I always said yes. Because when our father's hardware store nearly went bankrupt in 2016, I was the one who took out a personal loan of $47,000 and spent every weekend for 8 months rebranding the business and launching an online storefront that tripled their revenue. Because when Marcus dropped out of college and needed a job, I created a position for him at my agency and trained him myself even though he showed up late 3 days out of 5. Because when my mother needed surgery on her knee and the insurance didn't cover the full amount, I quietly wrote a check for $11,000 and never mentioned it at Thanksgiving, so yes. I said yes to working the wedding behind the scenes because that is what Claire Whitfield did. She showed up, she carried things, she made everything beautiful for everyone else while standing in rooms where nobody thought to save her a seat. Thus, moment that cracked something open inside me wasn't dramatic. It was painfully ordinary because halfway through the reception, while I was adjusting a floral arrangement near the kitchen entrance that Jenna had complained about twice already, a guest, a woman in a green silk dress who turned out to be Jenna's college roommate, walked up to me and said, "Excuse me, could you bring another bottle of Pinot Grigio to table 9? And before I could respond, my own mother appeared behind me, touched my shoulder and said to the woman, "Oh, she'll take care of it, she's handling things back here." And then she walked away without even looking at me, without even a flicker of recognition that her firstborn daughter was being mistaken for hired help at her own brother's wedding. And I stood there holding a white peony that was starting to wilt in my hand, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not rage, not sadness. Something quieter and far more permanent, a kind of clarity that arrives when you've been running on fumes of loyalty for so long that when the engine finally dies, you don't even hear the silence at first. You just feel the stillness. I set the peony down on the counter. I smoothed the front of the navy blue dress I had bought from a boutique on South Congress Avenue in Austin specifically for this wedding, a dress nobody had complimented because nobody had seen me long enough to notice it, and I walked out of that kitchen through the service corridor and into the ballroom where 240 guests were laughing and clinking glasses and dancing under fairy lights. And I found Marcus standing near the dessert table with a bourbon in his hand and a groomsman telling some story about a fishing trip. And I touched his elbow, and when he turned around, I saw his face shift from surprise to mild irritation, like I was interrupting something more important. And I said quietly enough that only he could hear, "Marcus, I love you. But I'm leaving because I finally understand that the only place you saved for me tonight was out of sight. And I can't keep pretending that doesn't tell me everything I need to know." And he opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking toward the exit, past the guest book I had designed myself, past the welcome sign I had hand-lettered at 2 a.m, past my father who was laughing with Jenna's parents and didn't even see me go. What happened next unfolded over the following 72 hours like a slow-motion earthquake, because by Sunday morning my phone had 43 missed calls. My mother left a voicemail that started with "How dare you?" and ended with crying. Marcus sent a text that read, "You ruined Jenna's night and she hasn't stopped crying." And Jenna herself posted a story on Instagram with the caption, "Family isn't always who shows up for you," which got 214 likes from people who had no idea she was the one who banished me to the kitchen in the first place, and none of them knew. None of them had any clue that the Whitfield and Lane agency I had built with my own hands, my own credit score, my own sleepless nights, was the same agency that managed Jenna's father's real estate company's entire digital presence, a contract worth $185,000 annually, a contract that existed solely because I had pitched it, won it, and personally guaranteed its deliverables for 3 consecutive years. And on Monday morning at 9:15 a.m., I sat down at my desk in my office on East 6th Street in Austin. I opened my laptop and I drafted the most composed, professional email of my career, informing Caldwell Properties that I would be stepping down as lead strategist on their account effective in 30 days, and that the transition would be handled with full cooperation, but that my personal guarantee and oversight would no longer be attached to the engagement. The fallout was swift and revealing in ways I hadn't even predicted, because within a week, Caldwell Properties' marketing director called Marcus, who had been loosely handling the secondary accounts at my agency, and told him they were reevaluating the partnership without my involvement. And within 2 weeks, they formally pulled their contract, and my father called me from the store in Hartford, his voice tight, saying, "You've put this whole family in a difficult position, Claire." And I listened. I really listened. And then I said something I had never said to him before. I said, "Dad, I've been in a difficult position for 6 years, and nobody noticed. Until it started costing you something." And the silence on the other end of that phone call lasted 11 seconds, I counted. Because in that silence, I could hear every unspoken truth our family had been tiptoeing around since I was old enough to be useful. That my value was measured in what I could provide, not in who I was. And that the moment I stopped providing, I became inconvenient. It has been 5 months now. I run a smaller operation out of a co-working space in East Austin with 2 employees I trust, and a client roster I built without a single family connection. And my apartment on Rainy Street has become the quietest, most honest place I have ever lived. Marcus and I exchanged exactly one message since that night. He wrote, "I hope you're okay." And I wrote back, "I am, for the first time in a long time. And maybe one day we will sit across from each other and talk about what happened at the Grandview estate. But right now, I am learning something I should have learned years ago, that the people who love you don't hide you in kitchens, they save you the best seat at the table. And if your whole life has been spent making yourself small enough to fit into the spaces other people leave for you, then the bravest thing you will ever do is stand up, walk out, and build your own table, where you sit at the head, not because you demanded it, but because you finally believed you deserved it." And if you are listening to this, and something in your chest just tightened, if you recognized yourself in any part of this story, then I want you to know that your moment of clarity is coming. It might be quiet, it might be ordinary, but it will change everything. And when it does, choose yourself. Even if your hands are shaking, especially if your hands are shaking. Because the people who truly love you will follow you to whatever table you build, and the ones who don't were never really sitting with you to begin with.